This is the relationship depicted by a diamond with the name of a relationship type. A relationship type may associate by entity with itself. For example, in a company, one employee may marry other employees. Several relationships may exist between the same entity. Employee marriage, that means ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਸੇਮ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਐਂਟੀਟੀ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਪਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਡਾਇਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਲਾਈਕ ਇਨ ਅ ਸੇਮ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇयर ਆਰ ਨੰਬਰ ਆਫ EMPLOYEES ਵਰਕ or maybe one employee is married with other employee or maybe so on. This is the relationship among the same entity. The relationship type is the marriage. This is the several relationship may exist between the same entities as shown below, like employee manage a department. This is a single one relationship. Then a employee works in a department, then this is a second relationship. Then a employee formal works in a department, this is the third relationship. This diagram shows that if there are two entities, then there are the number of relationship among these entities. There is not strictly only one relationship among the two entities. There are more than one there are more than one relationship in the two entities. Then next one is the mapping constraint. In ER schema may define certain constraint to which the content of a database must conform. Relationship type usually have certain constraints that limit the possible combination of entity that may participate in the corresponding relationship set. These constraints are determined from the many word situation that is relationship represent. There are two types of mapping constraint. One is mapping cardinalities and second one is participation constraint. Mapping constraint, these are also called degree of relationship. Mapping cardinalities express the number of entity to which another entity can be associated via a relationship set. These indicate the link between two entities for a specified occurrence of each. Mapping cardinalities are most useful in describing binary relationship sets. Types of mapping cardinality: 1 to 1, an entity A is associated with at most one entity in B, and an entity in B is associated with almost one entity in A. This is 1 to 1 mapping cardinalities. That means there are two entities A and B, and this is associated with every entity of A is associated with only one entity in B, and every entity of B is associated with almost one entity in A. That is called 1 to 1 relationship. For example, there are two entities, one is student and second entity is iCard. Relationship between these two entities is issued. One student is issued only one iCard and one iCard is issued only to one student. This condition this mapping cardinality is the type 1 to 1 relationship, that one student can have only one iCard. Next is the example of one to many relationship. An entity A is associated with any number of entity in B. An entity B in B, however, can be associated with almost one entity in A. That means in A entity there is associated with any number of entities in B, but in B, however, associated with almost one entity in A. This is one to many relationship. ਮਤਲਬ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ A ਇੱਕ ਬਲੋਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਵੀ ਐਂਟਰੀ ਨੇ ਉਹ B ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ, ਬਟ B ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਆਲਮੋਸਟ ਓਨਲੀ associated with almost only one entity in A. This is the example of one to many relationship. Next one is many to one relationship. An entity A is associated with almost one entity in B, and entity in B however can be associated with any number of entity in A. There are two block A and B. Any number of entity in A may be associated with only one entity in B, but B entity in B however can be associated with more than one number of entity in A. This is many to one relationship. And next is many to many relationship. This is an entity A is associated with any number of entities in B, and an entity in B is associated with any number of entities in A. There are two block A and B. That means A1 is associated with B1 and B2, and A2 is associated with B1, B2 and B3. In other type, B1 is associated with A1 and A2, B2 is associated with A1 and A2. That means any entity in A is associated with any number of entities in B, and an entity in B is associated with any number of entity in A. For example, there are two entities, one is student and second is test. Relationship among these entities is take. That means a number of student take more than one test, or number of tests can be taken by more than one student. This is the many to many relationship. Then participation constraint. The participation constraint specify whether the existence of an entity depend on its being related to another entity via relationship type. There are two types of participation constraint, total and partial. The participation of an entity set E in the relationship set R is said to be total if every entity in E participates in at least one relationship in R. If only some entities in E participates in the relationship in R, the participation of entity set is said to be partial. For example, if a company policy states that every employee must work for a department, then an employee can exist only. Thus, the participation of employee is called total participation, meaning that every entity in the total set of employee entity must be related to the department entity. Total participation is called existence dependency. And this is the example of the above topic. That is, the employee works in department. Maybe employee E1 is works in department D3, and employee E2 is works in department D4, and again employee E3 is works in department D1. Then employee E4 works in department D1 and D2. This is the mapping cardinality and relationship among the entities. This is again example of the employee manage the department. There is maybe employee E3 is manage the department D1, then employee E5 manage the department D3, again that means only one employee is manage one department. We do not accept that every employee to manage a department. So the participation of employee in the managed relationship type is partially meaning that some or part of set or employee entity are related to the department entity via manage but not necessarily. The mapping cardinality in and participation constraint are collectively called as structural constraint of a relationship type. In ER diagram, total participation is displayed as double line connected the participation entity type to the relationship, whereas partial participation is represented by a single line. Keys. Key is important to able to specify how rows in the relation are distinguishable. Conceptually, rows are distinct from one another, but from the database perspective, the different among some them must be expressed in the term of their attributes. Therefore, the value of the attribute and the value of an entity must be such that they can uniquely identify the entity. In other words, no two entries in an entity set are allowed to have exactly the same value for all attributes. A key allows us to identify a set of attributes that distinguish entity from each other. The key also help uniquely identify relationship and thus relationship from each other, and there are number of keys. First one is primary key. Mainly primary key is described as two constraint. One is uh, unique and other are one is not null. Primary key is basically a combination of two constraint. One is null constraint and second one is uh, unique constraint. That means the value an attribute on which we apply the primary key, the value of that attribute is null, not null, and the unique for all the rows in the table. Then next one is the candidate key, then super key and alternate key. These are the different types of key that are used in the database. Then form key. This is the entry relationship diagram, and this is the symbol like a rectangle, that is a symbolical representation of entity. Then double rectangle is represent weak entity in the database. Then diamond box display the relationship among two entities, then identify relationship for the entities. Then double diamond box identify relationship for the weak entity set. If there are two weak entity, then the relationship among these two entity is described by the double diamond box. And then oval is a attribute. If there is a double oval, then this is describe the multi-value attribute. If there is a line in the oval, then this is the primary key attribute. If there is a dotted line, then this is called the derived attribute. If a oval again divided into part, then this is the composite attribute. If a diamond box and entry is described, this is the total participation of the entry set in a relationship. Then this is the guidelines for drawing ER diagrams, refinement of ER diagrams. This is a good ER diagram always have only one to many relationship. If some entities are always having one to one relationship, then it is better to put on entity as an attribute of an other. Break all the many to many relationship into two equivalent one to many relationship by introducing an additional entity. This is the ER diagram. This is the example of ER diagram, like a customer is an entity and other side account is an also an entity. Deposit is the relationship among these two entity, and this is the attribute of customer, like customer name, customer id, and address and city of the customer, and the other side the account number and the balance is the attribute of an account. This is the again the example of ER diagram: one to one, one to many, many to one relationship, many to many relationship. Then next is the entity set: weak entity and strong entity set. And this is the super type and subtype of the entity. Thank you very much.